All right, hello everyone. We're really excited to be here today as part of WorkSafe Month. Can everyone hear me fine? Excellent, great. So I'm Emma and this is Jess, and we're going to be talking to you today about some actionable mental health skills that you can use, and particularly focusing on unhelpful emotions and unhelpful thoughts or thinking patterns. So we're hoping today you can learn a few things that you can take away to use both at work and at home. A big thank you to WorkSafe for having us and for all of you for coming along today. We're hoping it's going to be a really fun afternoon. Before we launch into our content, we'd just like to first take the opportunity to acknowledge and pay respect to the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional and original owners and continuing custodians of this land, and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. So this is us. We've already had a great introduction actually, so I won't say too much about who we are, but I'm Emma. As was said, I'm a clinical psychologist and I work across a few settings in Hobart. So in private practice, seeing people one-on-one for kind of a traditional therapy type role, also doing a bit of work teaching at the uni up-and-coming psych students. And then I co-facilitate and manage Wellmind's work, which is who we're presenting to you with today. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Wellmind's work in a moment.
Hi everyone, as mentioned, my name is Jess and I also work in private practice with individuals and I've been doing that for a little while now. And I'm a clinical psychology registrar, and then I also, co-founded Wellmind's work with Emma.
So some of you may have heard of Wellmind's work, some of you may not, but basically that's a business that Jess and I have put together fairly recently in order to fill some gaps that we've seen in the community and try and bolster people's mental health skills, particularly across workplaces. So really what we do is design and deliver interactive and evidence-based workshops and training to employees and managers. We also do some individual kind of training as well. We're really keen to get as many people as possible involved in this type of training. So if it's something that you are interested in or you think your workplace might be interested, please come and have a chat to us at the end of the session, or you've got our contact details in the little few sheets of paper in front of you as well. So you're welcome to call us or send us an email too. Okay, so just a little bit of extra housekeeping. So in front of you, you should have a little piece of paper that says Pre-Questionnaire, so Wellmind's WorkSafe training pre-questionnaire. I think there's 3 questions on there. And if everyone could just fill those out. So this is just a little thing for us to just check how today's training has helped you. So you've got one to do at the beginning and one to do at the end. So make sure you're filling in the one that just says pre-workshop. And when you've filled it out, it should only take a second hopefully, if you could just pop them in a pile maybe towards the end of each of the tables, and we'll come and get them later. They're anonymous, of course, so you don't need to put your name or anything on there either. If anyone doesn't have one, let us know, we've got more up the front. Cool, thanks everyone. I think most people have finished that now, so thank you very much for doing that. Our second point is just that mental health can obviously be a challenging topic at times. We're not really expecting today to be anything too heavy. We're not asking people to share anything particularly personal or anything like that. But we never know what can potentially trigger people. So if you do need a break, feel free to go out and stretch your legs or just zone out even in your chair. If you just want to drift off for a moment and come back when you feel ready, that's totally fine. If you're concerned at all, please also come have a chat to us at the end. And our last point just on here is ask questions if you've got them, please. So we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end, but I find it's easier sometimes for people to ask as we go, or they kind of fall out of your mind by the time you get to the end. So please just stick your hand up or call out if you've got a question, and we'll be happy to give our best go at answering that. In terms of what we're going to cover today, so we're about to get into the content, we're going to look at psychoeducation, so providing some extra understanding of what unhelpful emotions are and how they impact us, and then a couple of strategies for dealing with unhelpful emotions, and then the same again, but looking at what's going on more in our minds, so unhelpful thoughts. It'll make more sense to you as we go along too and give you more and more info. Any questions before we launch into the content? No. Awesome. Okay, Jess is going to start us off.
So for the beginning of today's session, we're going to talk a little bit about emotions, what they are, why we have them, and how to cope when they do indeed become unhelpful. So I guess just to understand a little bit about what emotions are, they, in the simplest form, electrical and chemical signals in our body that actually alert us to what's happening around us. And they often begin with our 5 senses, so that being sight, touch, sound, smell, and taste. And what happens is that once we pick up some information from our surroundings through these 5 senses, this information travels to the emotional centre of our brain, which some people might have heard of. It's called the limbic system. So the limbic system is connected to the rest of your brain and body, and it then tells us how to respond to that emotionally charged situation. Before I sort of keep going in terms of talking about what emotions do for us, does anybody have any thoughts on why we have emotions? So we like to keep this as interactive as possible. So if anybody wants to call out a reason. Survival, excellent. Yes, survival. It's definitely one reason we have them. Safety, yes. Keep us safe.
Connection and community?
Yes, connecting with others and community. Excellent, definitely. So those are 3 really good and key reasons that we do have emotions. And that really brings me to the main point that emotions are adaptive and they are important because they serve many functions. So one of those being survival and safety. So what they do is they keep us alive and they keep us out of danger. And emotions that facilitate this, people are usually pretty aware of anxiety or anger. They also help us with memory, so they help us remember people and events. And that's because the limbic system plays a key role in memory formation and functioning. They also help us cope with different or sometimes difficult situations. And an example of an emotion that does this would be something like gratitude. Communicating, and that's very closely linked with that connection. So connecting to others is a really important thing we need to do as human beings. And in order to do that, we need to communicate, and emotions help us do this. And lastly, emotions also help motivate us. So they motivate us for innovation and change. A key emotion that would help us do this, for example, would be boredom.
Great, so thanks Jess. I think that's a really good explanation of why we have emotions and how they're important to us. So what we want to do now is to understand a little bit more about how emotions can actually impact us in unhelpful ways. So yes, emotions are adaptive and they can be really great, but sometimes they can bring us unstuck. So that's what we want to talk about now. And we're going to particularly focus on how our brain and our body respond to signs of threat or danger. Has anybody here heard of the hand model of the brain or of flipping your lid? No, seeing some no's. Has anyone heard of flipping your lid kind of in a more colloquial, kind of context? Just like, I'm angry, I've flipped my lid, I've kind of lost it a little bit. Yeah. Yes. So what I'm going to talk about, flipping your lid, is kind of named after that more colloquial use of the phrase. So I'm going to get you to imagine, to explain this, that my hand is a tiny brain. Now, if you can't see my hand, because you're way up the back there, you can use your own hand to have a look. But basically, it kind of, if you squint a bit, looks a little bit like a mini brain. So you kind of got the folds over the top there, and you can see this is more towards the middle here, around towards the back. Now, this has 3 elements that we want to know about. So the first is this part of our wrist here, which is our brainstem. So we're talking back here, in behind at the base of our skull is where our brainstem is, and that runs down into our spinal cord as well. Now, this part of our brain is responsible for really basic physiological things that keep us alive. So that could be like keeping our heart beating, keeping our breathing rate going, and so on. So very important, and developed very early on in the evolution of humans. The next part we want to look at is actually in towards the centre of our brain. So I'm just going to roll up this top bit here of the brain. We can't actually do this with our real brains, but just to have a look at this part of the brain, which we call our limbic system. Now, you're probably thinking, I've heard of that. I think Jess just spoke about the limbic system, so that would be why. This is our emotional processing centre. So we call this our emotional brain. So if you can't remember a limbic system, you might remember emotional brain. So that's the middle part of our brain. It's kind of in here-ish, a little towards the middle and the back. And this is also quite an old part of our brain and developed quite early as we evolved as humans as well. Now, this limbic system or emotional brain, as Jess said, is where our memories and our emotions are stored. It's also responsible for managing any sign of threat or danger. So its job is to keep us safe, and it will take over in response to any sort of threat or danger. And when it notices threat or danger, it will start the process called fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Who has heard of that process of fight? Yep, awesome. Looks like pretty much everyone here has heard of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Great. So fawn, some of you might not be as familiar with, is one of the newer things that they've added. So it kind of started as fight, flight, then they added freeze, and now they've added fawn as well. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute too. But basically, that's what this part of the brain is designed to do. So we'll activate that process. Then the third part of the brain that we've got is over the top here. So we're talking about this part that wraps around the top and the front, which is this part of our brain here. This is called our Pre-Frontal Cortex, also known as our thinking brain. It's got emotional brain in the middle, thinking brain over the top. Now, this part of our brain developed last. It kind of developed from the back outwards. So it's actually not quite as strong as the emotional part of our brain. The thinking part of our brain is responsible for things like logical thought, problem solving, decision making, any kind of higher order thinking that we need to do, having difficult conversations, all of those types of things. Now, what actually happens when there's some sort of trigger that senses a sign of threat or danger is we do this thing called flipping our lid, which is bringing back to my original point. So our emotional brain switches on, our thinking brain switches off, so we've flipped our lid, and those two are no longer connected. So we can't think very clearly, and this part of our brain is now doing its job to keep us safe. So not really thinking, we're just acting and responding. So I'll give you an example of how this would work. So let's just say someone burst in through the back door and they had a chainsaw. It's a bit extreme. It's just the first thing that came into my head. Probably pretty scary. I reckon your brain is going to go, that's a sign of threat, that's danger. We're going to do this thing, we're going to flip our lid. So this part of our brain has gone offline and our emotional brain's in charge. And that will start the fight, flight, freeze or fawn that we talked about. So your brain might go, yep, I can take this guy. I'm going to try and fight him. I'm going to wrestle the chainsaw off him. I probably wouldn't be doing that, but you never know. You might try and run away, so flight. So we might just rush straight out the door, or there might be another exit in here somewhere. We might try and escape that way. We might just totally freeze. So that's one of the other Fs. Usually we do this if we don't think there's any chance we can run away or fight our way out of a situation. So you might just totally shut down and kind of play dead. Or you might fawn, which is where you try and kind of talk your way out of the situation by making yourself seem, I guess, innocent or smaller or sweet talking your way out of the situation a bit. So you might talk to the guy with the chainsaw and say, don't hurt me, I'm a really good person, I've got children, I've got a lot to live for, and see if that would work. May or may not. Now, all of these things happen automatically, so you don't get to choose which one you're going to do, because remember, you flipped your lid. Your thinking brain isn't online, and that's important because it's protective. If we had to think through, how am I going to get my way out of this situation, we may already be in trouble. We might be killed before we had a chance to work out the best solution. We don't have time to do pros and cons, we just need to act. And that's how our emotional brain works to keep us safe. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Unfortunately, our brains can have a tendency to do this flipping your lid thing when there are smaller signs of threat. So it's not very often that we're in a situation where someone comes into the room with a chainsaw, or if you're thinking of the traditional example, we don't really see saber-toothed tigers anymore, nothing like that. But we do have other opportunities that are threatening, like having to give a presentation, or having to do a difficult task at work, something like that. And the same process can still happen. Your brain can go, that is a threat, I'm going to flip my lid. So you might find that you're really anxious, or you might be frustrated and angry, and you may have flipped your lid and you can't quite think your way through the situation. So today, what we want to teach you about doing is to either, A, if you flip your lid, how you can get it back on, because sometimes we do flip our lid, or B, how we can keep our lid on as tightly as possible. Any questions about that? No. Great. If you're unsure or you want any further explanation, come and have a chat to me as well.
So thanks, Emma. Emma always does a really good job of explaining flipping your lid very comprehensively. So I guess what we really want to get into now is talking about how we can get that lid back on or keep it secure. So that we can keep that rational, logical thinking brain working rather than being controlled by that emotional or primitive brain. So one of the best ways to return your lid to its rightful place is to actually change our breathing. Now, I think a lot of people have probably heard of breathing as a technique before. Does anybody know what happens to our breathing when we're stressed or anxious? Yes, I've heard very many from the front and the back. It increases, it's shallower, and it's faster. So all of those things are 100% correct. So when you flipped your lid, when you're angry, when you're stressed, or when you are anxious, your breathing does all three of those things. And one of the really excellent things is that we can kind of, hijack that emotional center of our brain and calm it down by changing our breathing. And by, deepening and slowing down our breathing, we're actually kind of sending signals to our body that say, hey, you're safe. So it's actually a way for us almost to trick ourselves into calming down. And that's why it's one of the most recommended techniques. So does anybody have any idea of what the correct breathing technique is or how to go about it? No, that's perfectly okay. So lots of the time we recommend breathing in through your nose and then either out through your nose or out through your mouth, depending on what feels most comfortable for an individual. And one of the most important parts of the correct breathing technique is actually to get your inhale breath right down into your stomach or diaphragm. So what that means is that when you inhale, your stomach actually inflates, and when you exhale, your stomach deflates. So it's almost like blowing up a balloon in your lower abdomen. And one really simple technique that Emma and I commonly teach is known as the Breath Waltz. Does anyone know what a waltz is? It's a dance. Anybody got a little bit more information? Anybody musical here? Yes. So it's in a signature of 3/4, which means 3 beats to a bar of music. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And very simply, the breath waltz is breathing in for 3 seconds and out for 3 seconds. So it is one of the most simple breathing techniques that there is. So what I'm actually going to get you guys to do is I'm going to invite you, if you would like, to test your breathing rate, your resting breathing rate with me. Then we're going to engage in the breath waltz and then see if your breathing rate has come down after it. So as we always say, participation is completely voluntary. If you don't want to, no problems. So try not to change your breathing rate on the first go. So we're just going to count for 1 minute how many breaths you do. And so just count on the exhale. So in and out, that's 1. All right, so I'm going to get you to do 1 minute of that and just mark down on a bit of paper in front of you how many breaths you do in this minute. I'll tell you when to start and when to stop. So begin. And stop. So whatever number you've got there, just jot that down. Hopefully you're just counting the out breath. If you accidentally counted in and out, that's fine, just half it. So now what I'm going to do is I'll walk you through it. We're just going to do 1 minute of the breath waltz. So that's breathing in and out. And so you can choose to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, or in through your nose and out through your mouth, up to you. So ready, set, in, 2, 3, out, 2, 3. 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 So just jot down, we're going to do that, we're going to measure our breathing rate again now and jot down and see if there's any difference. So, same thing that we did before we engaged in that breathing exercise, just counting your out breath for 1 minute. Ready, set, go. And stop. So just jot down that number. Hopefully it hasn't got higher for anyone. That's not what we're looking for. But did anybody notice any differences or changes in their breathing rate at all? Yeah? Somebody said it dropped for them? Yep. Did anybody else find that theirs dropped as well? Yep. Excellent. So that doesn't happen for everybody on the first time they try this, but for a lot of people it does. And I think that really demonstrates that's 1 minute of just focusing on slowing your breathing down, and that's how effective that technique really can be. If some people in here didn't get that effect, it might be due to the setting. So the setting might be a bit distracting or potentially a bit noisy or crowded. You might be up next to somebody you don't know that well. Or you might have accidentally lowered your breath rate even by monitoring it in the first place. So sometimes when we pay attention to our breathing, even just noticing it, we can slow down. So I encourage everybody to have a little bit of a go at that at home where the environment's a bit more conducive to it as well. So I guess the Breath Waltz actually lowers your breathing rate to around about 10 breaths per minute. So by breathing in and out that 3-second cycle, you should get about 10 breaths-ish per minute when you're doing that activity. And a breathing rate of about 10 to 14 is actually what is average or standard. However, when our lid is flipped, our breathing will likely be much faster than that. Does anybody have any questions about breathing or the Breath Waltz as a technique? No? Excellent.
Thanks, Jess. Hopefully we're all feeling a little more relaxed now. I always find it's nice to do a little breathing activity. And I just think it's really cool that you can do 1 minute of breathing and it can actually change your breath rate. So it's something to keep in mind, and also it takes a little bit of practice to be able to do it when you've flipped your lid, because usually we're quite either angry or anxious or overwhelmed. So if you can practice it when you're nice and calm in the beginning, that can be useful, and then you'll get quite good at using it when you really need to as well. Okay, what we're going to talk about now is another strategy that you can use for overwhelming emotions, and this is called a mental health first aid kit. Now, we're going to tell you how you can go about putting one of these together, and we've got one we've brought along today to show you as well that you can have a look at later. Basically, Jess and I have talked a lot about how there is always a physical first aid kit that you can use if you hurt yourself, if you cut open your knee, you can go get a bandage or a band-aid from your first aid kit, but there's nothing really that you can do for your mental health if you're feeling a bit emotionally overwhelmed or upset. So it can be nice to try and put something together. Now, how you do this is by collecting things that are meaningful or calming for you and putting them into some sort of box or bag. And we want the items to engage at least one of your 5 senses. So your sight, sound, smell, touch or taste. I'm going to talk you through how to do this in a second. Basically, we recommend making one that you can keep either at home, so you might have a box you keep at home or in the car, and then potentially having a little travel version that you could have as well, so maybe a little bag or just something small even you can put in your pocket. Now, what we would like to do today is to brainstorm with you the types of things you might like to put into a mental health first aid kit. So we're going to do this by using the different senses. So we're going to go through each one. What are you writing up there, Jess? Sight. Sight. We'll do sight first. Is that the first one on there? Sight. Beautiful. Okay. So what I want you to do is to have a think about what types of things that you could look at that would make you feel more calm or help you if you were feeling overwhelmed or upset. So if you just want to yell anything out that you think would be useful, I think once we get a roll on, you'll get the idea. Has anyone got any suggestions? Flowers. Cool, okay. So, yeah, we could put potentially some dried flowers in there. We want to make sure with our mental health first aid kit, obviously, that we're not going to put in anything in there that's too perishable, because I did have someone, we were doing taste, and they were like, lasagna. It's got to be lasagna. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. I think the lasagna is going to be mouldy after a few days. Anyway, we ended up putting a picture of her mum's lasagna in there, which was lovely. And someone at one of our last trainings also really wanted to put a cat in there. Again, it's probably not quite going to work. So we've got to be a little bit creative. So yes, dried flowers or a picture of your favourite flowers could be perfect. What else do you think for sight? Photos. Yeah, family, perfect. Yeah. Family photos are a lovely thing to have in there, and often really grounding and calming for people. Yep, what else? Mandala. Yeah, a mandala. So if you don't know, a mandala is one of those little pictures that are quite intricate that you can colour in, or you can just look at. And actually you can put colouring in pencils potentially in there as well. Some people really like to do what's called mindful colouring, and there's a lot of, you've probably seen a bit of a trend towards those adult colouring books these days, which can be quite grounding as well. Anything else people think of for sight? Books. Yeah, you could put a little book in there, definitely, if you've got one that you think would be suitable for when you're feeling overwhelmed, definitely.
Put something significant like your grandmother's ring.
Yeah.
Something that's,
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, something that's got anything, I suppose, that you can look at that's got, significant meaning to you, for sure. And if it's something like jewellery, then it can also probably work on that sense of touch as well. So it's got a nice double there with the senses. Other things that we think sometimes are useful for sight are letters or postcards or a birthday card or anything that someone's kind of written to you that's got something nice in it. Or you can write yourself what we would call a coping statement, which is something that you can read to yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed. Cool. All right. Any others before we move on to sound? You got any others, Jess?
Just something that people might be more familiar with. A coping statement's almost like sort of like a positive affirmation.
Yeah, so a coping statement is kind of like a positive affirmation. So you might like to find some on the internet, or that it's just a more personalised version, basically a coping statement to you. All right, sound. Now you've got to be a little bit creative here. It's quite difficult to capture sounds in a box. Has anyone got any suggestions of what you could do for sound? Cellophane? Someone said, yeah, that's a good idea. Something you can kind of scrunch. Yep, and someone said music. Yeah, yep, music is great, and you can either put in some headphones, which is kind of just a reminder to yourself, I could listen to some music right now, or you can put in a playlist, or just a reminder that says, listen to my chill out playlist, something like that. Anything else for sound? Bubble, oh, great. Also good for touch as well. Yep, makes that nice crisp popping sound. There's, of course, there's that big trend to the poppet things now, which are like rubber versions of bubble wrap, which is good for touch, but they don't have the same sound. So I think bubble wrap for the sound is good. A cat. Who said that? A cat. You could put a reminder to listen to a recording of your cat. There you go. Maybe there's a playlist on Spotify that's got cats. I'm not sure. There probably is. You can also, nature sounds people quite like sometimes, so you can potentially, there's some good apps you can get, so you might have a reminder to do that. Listen to some rain sounds, something like that.
Calming.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, recordings of loved ones or your kids or something like that can be nice. So it could be a video or an audio recording. And you can also, sometimes people like to put little musical instruments in there as well. If you're someone who's a bit musical, you could put like a bell in there, a chime, and depending on where you're having it, it could also be a fun way to annoy some of your work colleagues. Cool, okay, I think that's pretty good for sound unless anyone had any others. No, all right, let's go to what's next on this list, taste. Taste is also a tricky one because, of course, we probably can't have anything too perishable. What types of things could you put in there for taste? Chocolate, yes. Good thinking, yes. Gin, chocolate and gin. This is... Now, make sure you don't only include the chocolate and the gin. I make for a nice evening, but we want some other things as well. And I guess if you're going to include alcohol, just have a think about where you're including it. So if it's for your one at home, your mental health first aid kit at home, fine. If it's for your one at work, maybe you need to clear it with your boss first. Great. What else for taste? Yes, gum is a really good one. Non-perishable, and you can get a nice flavour from that. Mints as well, pretty similar. Yep. Anything else we can think of? Tea. Yes, good one. Yeah, tea is a great one. And also tea, or making a cup of tea can be quite a calming thing to do as well, as a bit of a thing to do when you're overwhelmed. So tea or tea bags, or you can do the same with coffee. If you're more of a coffee person, have a thing of coffee in there. Anything else we can think of for taste? That's pretty good. The only other one that I found quite interesting that a client suggested to me once was a packet cake mix, because they really like to bake when they are upset. So they chucked one of them in there just as a reminder. So you can be quite creative with this. You could do pancakes perhaps, then you've got something to get your anger out with as well if you needed to. All right, let's go on to touch. This is probably, I reckon, my favourite. You can do a lot of cool things in the mental health first aid kit for touch. What types of things could we have? Stress ball, yes. And you can get some really funky stress balls these days that are quite, have different feels to them. So, yep, stress ball's perfect. What else?
Soft toy.
Yep. I'm a big fan of a soft toy, not going to lie. Anything soft and cuddly can be quite nice if you're feeling upset, for sure. And if you don't have one, you can use, if you're having it at home, you could probably put a little cushion in there, a pillow, but you could also just get a square of soft material as well. Some people prefer silky, whatever you like the feel of. What else? Feather? Yep. Feather's a good one as well. Any of those kind of nature items are quite nice as well. You can do a smooth stone, can be quite nice to just roll around in your hand too. Anything else?
Sandpaper.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, so any of your different textural items are good. And of course, there's heaps of cool fidget toys and stuff that exist now. I'm sure you'll have seen them all over the place. So if you're a fan of any of those, have a look and look at the different options. There's quite a lot of different things you can try. Some people also like to put like some hand cream or nail polish or that type of thing in there as well. And then our last one is smell. What types of things could you put in there for smell? Perfume? Yeah. Yes, essential oils, perfume, great. Candles, yes. Yeah, and you can just pick your favourite scent, which is really nice. Anything else for smell? Yes, a little bar of soap. Yep, great. And some of your other things as well, you could potentially smell as well as taste. So your coffee or your tea or your chocolate, all of those would work for your sense of smell as well. The other thing I've seen people occasionally do if they prefer spices is sometimes people will put in a little thing of spice like cinnamon or something like that they could smell. Great, I think that's a pretty awesome list. Thank you, everyone. So obviously you're probably not going to put all of those things in there, but if you can try and get, something that covers each of the 5 senses, then that is awesome. We'll leave that up there too, so if anyone wants to take a photo of it or anything for suggestions, they can. The other thing we recommend doing to put into your mental health first aid kit is just a list of suggestions of things you can do when you're feeling overwhelmed. So it could be 10 things that I can do when I'm upset or when I'm stressed or whatever it might be. So it could just be simple as go for a walk, call my friend Bob, listen to this playlist, whatever it might be, but just some suggestions as well. So if you're like, okay, everything in here isn't working for me right now, you've got even some other things that you can try. In terms of...
Bubbles is also another good one.
Oh, yes.
I went to my son once and that was really good to control his breathing.
Oh, that could be everywhere.
Yes, bubbles, excellent suggestion. Yes, and probably...
Bubbles,
Yeah, you can
probably
look at the bubbles. Probably don't eat the bubble mixture. But yes, that's a good one. Definitely controls your breathing too. So here's ours that we've made earlier. There's some pretty cool things in here. This is I don't know if you've seen these, they reverse. It's quite fun to play with. We've got squishy stress ball. This is Jess's least favourite edition, but my favourite. Oh, hold on, I think it's going to fall apart. I quite enjoy that.
Do not put one of those in there.
And then, we've got all types of things in here. So we'll just maybe I'll sit it up the front. So if you want to have a look at the types of things you could include, feel free to come and have a look and play with that. You can make them much smaller. This was just, the size that we picked, but it could be much smaller as well. And we recommend just having a play around and see what works best for you. Any questions about putting one of these together? Feel free to come and have a look at the end. Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
So I guess with the mental health first aid kit, what it does is it uses our 5 senses as a way of, grounding us to the present and reducing our distress. So that's what it's effectively doing. It's giving us a little bit of focus and bringing our arousal level down. So there are some other strategies that work in similar ways that other people may also find beneficial. And one of these strategies is known as the 5 senses. I really like this one because unlike a mental health first aid kit, which is awesome, this doesn't need any preparation and you can use it wherever you are. So for example, if you're a forgetful person like myself and you forgot your mental health first aid kit, you don't need any resources with you. So I guess basically with this strategy, it involves identifying different things in your environment. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk you through it. Again, please participate if you feel comfortable. If not, feel free to sit this out. So what I want you to do with me is I want you to just notice 5 things around the room that you can see. So this could be the colour of the walls, it could be a pen on the table, it could be a word in a banner. So I'll just give you a moment to notice 5 different things that you can see. after this, I want you to try and tune in. This can be quite difficult, to 4 things that you can hear. So this might be the sound of my voice. It could be the air conditioning unit. It could be your own breath. Could be the rustling of your sleeve against your side. And after you've sort of noticed 4 things that you can hear, or you've tuned into that, I want you to notice 3 things that you can touch or feel. So that might be the material of your pants connected with your leg. It could be you could reach out and feel what the tablecloth feels like. Or it might be the pen in your hand and just noticing the sensation of that as well. So after you've noticed 3 things that you can feel, what I want you to do is notice 2 things that you can smell. So I encourage people to try and see if they can smell anything, or if there's anything close by that's appropriate, like a mint. You can pick it up and see if you can smell it. If not, I encourage people to actually think about something that they like the smell of. So a couple of things they like the smell of, because that in itself can be quite powerful for some people who are good visualisers and have good imagery for things. And we actually have some pretty good memory for smells sometimes as well. And then the last one is 1 thing that you can taste. Again, if you've got something close by, you can taste that. Or 1 thing that you like the taste of, again, in a similar way to the smell. So this activity is called the 5 senses, and I guess, like I said, you can take that one wherever, and it doesn't matter where you are, you can engage with that. How did people find that activity? Does anybody have any comments about that? No? Where was your mind focused? Did anybody... Yeah, so I guess, yep, great. So we're going to talk a little bit about unhelpful thoughts in a minute, but something that grounding can also do is, in connecting with your senses, give you a little bit of space from thinking about the things that are stressful or anxiety provoking as well. Just give you a minute for that distress to come down as well with that. Yeah, great. Does anybody have any questions about that technique before we, or grounding with your senses before we move on? No? Yeah, just, sorry, before we do move on, if you are feeling overwhelmed, it can be useful to just ground yourself with even one of your senses at a time. So an example could be counting backwards in 7s, or counting how many things you could hear, or looking at just a photo of a loved one. So if you're somebody who's like, look, I think the mental health first aid kit sounds great, but that's a lot of effort for me, even just choosing one thing can be helpful.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah, okay. Once we know how to get our emotional lids back on, like I said, we can turn our attention to our thoughts. Remember, we can't access our rational, logical thinking brain when our lid's flipped. So once we've kind of done some of these emotional strategies, we can start looking at how to manage unhelpful thoughts. So to better understand the way humans think, it's handy to know what the human brain has evolved to do and this video is by Russ Harris, who's the creator of The Happiness Trap, and he also teaches a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, and this really easily explains what our mind has evolved to do.
The human mind has evolved to think in such a way that it naturally creates psychological suffering. You see, back in the Stone Age, 200,000 years ago, life was pretty dangerous for our caveman ancestors. So if a caveman or cavewoman wanted to survive, their minds had to constantly be on the lookout for things that might hurt or harm them. And if that cave person's mind wasn't good at predicting, spotting, or avoiding danger, what happened to her? The default setting of the caveman mind was safety first. And we in the modern world have inherited this. Our modern minds are constantly warning us of things that might hurt or harm us. The caveman mind says, "Watch out, there might be a bear in that cave, you could get eaten. Watch out, that shadow on the horizon might be an enemy from another clan, you could get speared." Our modern mind then does worrying, predicting the worst, avoiding anything that scares you, anxiety in all of its different forms. Back in caveman days, you survive an encounter with a bear or a wolf, then it's useful to replay it. It's useful for your mind to go over the events and remember what you did to survive so that you're better prepared for next time. But in our modern world, we go over and over painful memories, dwelling on them, reliving them, even when there's nothing useful to learn or the lesson has been well and truly learned a long time ago. In the Stone Age era, as a caveman or cavewoman, you have to fit in with the group. If you are alone, you will soon die. So your mind compares you to others in the group. Am I fitting in? Am I contributing enough? Am I following the rules? Am I doing anything that might get me thrown out? Now, in modern life, we're always comparing ourselves to others. But the problem is we're no longer in a small group. Our groups are enormous today, and we carry with us devices that constantly feed us images and stories of people all over the planet. This constant comparison ramps up our fear of being judged or rejected or not fitting in or just not being good enough. The caveman mind tells you you need more food, you need more water, better weapons, better shelter. The cave people who thought this way lived longer and had more offspring. Unfortunately, in the modern world, this manifests as greed, dissatisfaction, craving, wanting. It's never enough. I need more, more, more. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, these Stone Age thought patterns are intensified by the sheer pace and complexity of modern life. Our frantic existence, rushing from task to task, that never-ending to-do list. So, when your mind starts doing this unhelpful stuff, as all minds do, remember it's not defective or abnormal, and it's not deliberately trying to make your life difficult. It's simply doing the job it has evolved to do, trying to keep you safe and save you from pain.
Any questions about that little video? No. Cool, great. We think it's just a really useful one to explain kind of what our brain has evolved to do over time and how we can be brought unstuck a little bit sometimes. So, as just said, we're now going to talk about how to manage a couple of strategies for how to manage unhelpful thoughts and ways of thinking. So, before we do that, we're going to get you to engage in a little experiential activity that's going to help to demonstrate the power of your mind. And it sounds a little bit like we're crossing over or something. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, we're going to look at how your mind can be powerful and unhelpful for you. So you should have an A5 piece of paper, a blank A5 piece of paper. If you have written notes on it and stuff, that's fine. Just grab a little piece of paper from elsewhere, but just a blank, about A5 size piece of paper. If you don't want to engage again, of course, feel free to just sit and relax. If you do want to engage, what I want you to do is take out that blank piece of paper, and just a caveat, this can be a little uncomfortable for people sometimes, so please feel free to discontinue if you're not enjoying yourself. But take the piece of paper and I want you to write on it one self-critical thought or worry that you're having at the moment. So for example, self-critical thought could be I'm a bad parent, or I'm not doing enough at work, or a worry could be what if nobody at work likes me. Any self-critical thought that's kind of popped up for you lately, just put one on the piece of paper in front of you. You're not going to have to share it, nobody else should see it, so just keep it to yourself. And once you've got that self-critical thought written on your piece of paper, I would like you to very slowly bring the piece of paper up until it is covering your face, so nearly touching your nose. So you can kind of still just read it, but it's very close to your face. And what I want you to do is to just take a moment now and notice what you can see. So what can you see around your piece of paper? Can you see the expression on my face very clearly? How easily can you see the other people around you and the things in the room around you? Do you think it would be very easy to have a conversation with me like this? You might feel okay for now, but how might you feel if you had to do this for an hour or a day? Do you think it would be very easy to pay attention to your family, or to drive a car, or to do your work, or to cook your dinner? What I would like you to do now is to keep your piece of paper, but instead of having it in front of your face, I want you to push it out in front of you. So as far away as you can, so stretch it away like you really want to get rid of it. And now again, I just want you to notice again how that feels, how easy it is to look and see what I'm talking about, how easy it would be to have a conversation with me, how easy it might be to play with your kids, cook your dinner, do your work, and so on. How long do you think you could keep doing this for before you got tired? Doing this demonstrates all the efforts that we make to get rid of self-critical thoughts. We want them to be away from us. We might try and numb out by using alcohol. We might try and avoid and withdraw. We might try and engage in self-help activities and so on. Now, what I want you to do, if you've managed to keep your piece of paper up, is to pop it down just in your lap in front of you, or just so it's still nearby you. And I want you to notice how this feels in comparison. So what do you see around you now? Do you think it would be any different to engage with your life, to play with your kids, to cook dinner, to engage in work activities, to have meaningful conversations? So I just want you to note that the self-critical thought is still there. We haven't gotten rid of it, we didn't burn it, we haven't torn it up. It's still there in your lap, but it should be, most people would report it has less of an impact on them now. And this is really metaphorical for how struggling and getting hooked in by painful thoughts or memories or emotions can impact us in our daily life. So you can really become disconnected from the world around you and hooked up with these types of ways of thinking. Would anyone be happy to share how they found that activity in terms of what it was like to have it here versus down on their lap?
Can't see anything else because I'm here.
Yep. Yeah, you can't see anything else. And this sometimes happens to us. I think this is really the point. Sometimes, and it's not, might be this one thought, it might be other thoughts, it might be 100 different worries that are there up in our face. It just makes it so difficult to see anything else or to do anything else when we're so wrapped up in that. So really, we want to find different strategies that can help us unhook from these difficult thoughts. And we're going to teach you a couple of those in a moment. But Jess is just going to explain that a little bit further first.
So with that experiential activity that Emma just walked you through, it's meant to demonstrate the power of thoughts and how struggling with them by either having them sort of in the forefront of our mind and kind of going over them again and again, or trying to push them away. So all of our efforts to try and get rid of them or not focus on them, how that can be unhelpful for us. So in this way, you can kind of think of thoughts as quicksand. So bear with me. So with quicksand, the more you struggle, the faster that you get sucked under. In fact, the worst possible thing that you can do is struggle in quicksand. Instead, the way to survive is to lie back and relax and try and float on the surface. And this is really difficult to do because every instinct in our body when we're in quicksand is telling us to struggle. But if we do what comes naturally in that situation, what happens is we'll sink and drown in the quicksand. And I guess this is sort of a similar approach we need to take with thoughts. Because although dropping the struggle with them is psychologically tricky and does not come naturally to us at all, it is actually a lot less physical effort than struggling with them. And so struggling with them only makes us more distressed and consumed by them, like having the piece of paper right in front of your face. However, once we kind of drop the struggle with these difficult thoughts that do pop up for us, like when we've got the piece of paper down in our lap or sitting in front of us, we create space and have room to breathe and no longer feel like we're totally consumed or drowning in them, so to speak. So what Emma and I are going to talk to you about are known as thought diffusion strategies, and these are ways that we can help to drop the struggle with difficult thoughts so that they have far less impact on us.
Okay, so just quickly, we've been talking about thought diffusion. Jess just mentioned thought diffusion, which is about getting space or distance from our thoughts and dropping that struggle with them. And that's one of the main ways that we can challenge or that we can cope with unhelpful thoughts. The other main way that we can cope with unhelpful thoughts is known as thought challenging. So I'm just going to quickly explain the difference between the two, and then we're going to give you a strategy for thought challenging and we're going to give you a strategy for thought diffusion. So thought challenging is basically identifying your thoughts. So this takes a bit of practice in the beginning as well. So noticing what's going on in your mind, what your brain is telling you. So if it's a self-critical thought or a worry, identifying that. And then seeing whether we have any evidence for that thought. So we're trying to look at them from an objective point of view. Thought challenging teaches us that thoughts are not always facts. So just because I think something doesn't necessarily mean it's true. So that's what thought challenging does. And thought challenging is a good technique to use when your thoughts may be unhelpful and potentially based on opinions or judgments or not entirely accurate or factual. On the other hand, thought diffusion is all about getting space or distance from your thoughts. In thought diffusion, we actually don't care whether or not the thought is true or not. We just want to create some space from it. So like when we had the piece of paper down in our lap. Thought diffusion teaches us really that thoughts are just a string of words, and thought diffusion strategies are really useful for any types of thought, but they can be most useful for when your thoughts are difficult or uncomfortable, but are also true. Any questions about the difference between those two? I've just gone through quickly. Cool. It'll probably be even clearer once you have a look at the strategy.
So as Emma mentioned, thought challenging techniques can be really helpful to obtain a more objective and balance perspective, because especially when our lid is flipped, we tend to be in an anxious or a threat mode of thinking, and our thinking patterns can be more subjective than objective when we're in that state. So one useful thought challenging technique is the use of what we call thought challenging questions. And so some of these questions we're just going to go through now. So one of them can be, am I jumping to any conclusions? So if we're feeling emotional, something that could be good is to check in with, am I jumping to any conclusions? What are some alternative explanations? So an example of this could be, Karen thinks I'm an idiot. So could there be some alternative explanations from Karen's behaviour apart from her thinking I'm an idiot? Has she had a bad day? Do I know what else is going on in her life, for example, that might be contributing to her behaviour other than she doesn't like me or has a negative opinion of me? The next one is, if someone I loved was having this thought, what might I say to them? I think this one can be really helpful for a lot of people, because when we have people come to us, we're really good at generating a logical and alternative explanation for them that's a lot kinder, but we're not so good for doing that for ourselves. So an example could be, if you've maybe messed up on a work project, put a typo in something, you might say to a friend, it's okay to make a mistake, whereas in your head you might be going, oh, I'm going to get fired, or the worst possible thing's going to happen. The third one is, what happened last time I worried about this? So I guess this tries to actually help you ascertain how likely, is it that your worries will come true? Did they come true last time? So that can be another helpful one for that.
We've just got a couple more on here as well. So this is one of my favourite ones to ask yourself. So if you've got something coming up in the future and you're quite worried about that, you can ask yourself, what is the best thing that might happen? What is the worst thing that might happen? And what is actually the most likely thing to happen? So usually our brain is going to go to worst case scenario, but in reality, it's probably somewhere in the middle between best and worst case. So that can be quite a useful one to ask yourself. And if the worst thing was to happen, what could I do to cope with that? Usually if we ask people, okay, well, if that terrible thing happens, what would you do to cope? They can usually come up with something to think of to cope with it. So trying to work out how you could cope can be useful too. How important is this? Will this matter to me in 1 month, 6 months, a year's time? So sometimes little things can happen. I think this can particularly happen at work, or particularly in relationships. Sometimes you get stuck on a little thing and it becomes seemingly really important, when in reality, if you stop for a moment and go, actually, how important is this? In 12 months' time, am I going to be thinking about this? And if the answer is probably not, then perhaps we can look at trying to reduce some of our frustration or worry in another way and try and just let that go a little bit more. And then the last one we've got on here is for what ifs. So some people think a lot in what ifs, particularly people who've got a little bit of a tendency to be anxious. So what if I'm fired? What if I mess this up? What if I make a mistake? What if I embarrass myself? And usually we can get on a bit of a spiral, a bit of a roll with these. If you notice your mind thinking in what ifs, what you can do is try and balance it out, because they're usually negative, with 3 positive or more neutral what ifs for every 1 negative what if. So if you've got, what if I get fired? You might go, okay, what if I don't get fired? What if my boss actually thinks I'm doing an all right job? What if I just get some feedback on things that I can improve on? So just trying to balance the negative to positive a little bit more, or negative to realistic as well. So that's just some really quick thought challenging questions you can use. Any questions about those? No. Awesome. Cool. All right.
So we've given you a brief introduction to thought challenging. Now what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about the other main groups of strategies for working with unhelpful thoughts, being thought diffusion. So just a quick reminder, thought diffusion in its simplest form is just getting space or distance from your thoughts. We're not trying to challenge if they are true or accurate. We just want to let go of that struggle with them. So the first technique that I'm going to teach you is called I'm having the thought that. So what I want you guys to do is think of a self-judgment or a self-critical thought. It can be the one that you had before, or it can be a new one. Again, if you don't feel like participating, that's perfectly okay. And I want you to put it in a short sentence in your mind in the form of I am. So I am not smart enough, I am not pretty enough, I'm stupid, I'm a bad mum, whatever that self-judgment or self-critical thought might be or how that might come up for you. And what I want you to do is just replay it over in your head for a few seconds now. So really try and focus on it, really try and get wrapped up in it, giving it your full attention, so to speak, trying to believe it as much as you possibly can. Now, what I want you to do after you sort of replayed this thought in your mind is replay it again, but with the phrase in front of it, I'm having the thought that. I'm stupid, I'm a bad mum, I'm not smart enough. And to take it one step further, just add the additional phrase of, I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not smart enough, I'm a bad parent, I'm not pretty enough. So this is a very simple thought diffusion technique. Does anybody feel comfortable in just commenting on what happened to their self-critical thought for them during that activity? Yeah, so you felt like it was a little bit less personal by the sounds of that? Yep, create a little bit of space, and that in the essence is what thought diffusion is, creating some space, a little bit of distance, so you're not holding onto it so tightly or personally.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's I'm having the thought that, very simple, straightforward, and it's quite a nice one to do, to just tack on to thoughts that you might have that are impacting you. It really does help to create that distance. We're going to do one more strategy. This is our last one, and then we've just got a few little things to wrap up with. I'm just going to give you a little taster of it. We'll just do a couple of minutes because it's also a really nice relaxing thing to do to end presentation as well. Has anyone heard of Leaves on a Stream? No? A yes? A couple of people? Yep. Awesome. So it's a visualisation activity. Some people are awesome at visualisation and some people really struggle with it. It's just the way we're built and hardwired. So if you struggle a bit with visualisation, that's okay. Just have a go. Again, if you don't wish to participate, just sit and relax. I'm going to talk you through how to do this activity rather than explaining it. So what I would invite you to do is just get comfortable, get in a nice comfortable position, sit upright in your chair. You can close your eyes. I'm one that finds it really useful to close my eyes for visualisation, so if that helps you, please do that. If not, just fix your gaze at a point kind of in front of you on the floor. And I just want you to start by taking a couple of breaths in and out. We'll just try and slow our breathing down a little bit. And I want you to imagine that you're sitting outside on a really soft green grassy hill. and you're resting your back up against a beautiful old gum tree. It's a really sunny day, the sky's clear blue, and you're nicely in the shade of the gum tree. As you look out in front of you, you can see a crystal clear blue stream that's gently flowing out of sight. I want you to imagine feeling the soft ground beneath you, hearing the sound of the stream flowing past, and just the way the stream looks as you watch it. As you're looking at the stream, you notice that there are some leaves from the gum tree behind you drifting along. So these leaves are floating down from the tree onto the stream and floating out of sight. Now, every time you notice a thought pop into your mind, I want you to try and imagine taking that thought, placing it onto one of the leaves and watching it drift down the stream. You can do this with any thought, regardless of whether it's positive or neutral or negative, whether it's pleasurable or painful. If you notice any difficult or painful feelings coming up, just acknowledge them. Say to yourself, I notice myself having a feeling of frustration, of boredom, of anxiety, and then place that thought onto a leaf and watch it float along. From time to time, you'll probably notice your thoughts hooking you in and distracting you from being fully engaged in this activity. This is totally normal. All you need to do as soon as you notice that is to bring your attention back to the scene, take any thoughts, place them on leaves, and send them down the stream. Now, when you're ready, I want you to just allow the image of the stream to start to dissolve, and you can just slowly bring your attention back into the room. Thanks everyone for engaging in that activity. Does anyone want to just quickly share how they found that? Yeah, to visualise it or to concentrate or...
Not constantly just have what I put there, just go around in circles and
come back up again.
have something else take its spot and just constantly having a thought.
Yeah, and I think it also demonstrates, especially the first few times you do this, how busy our minds actually are. There's a lot of these thoughts. They're the same ones sometimes, different ones, but they're coming up. So it can be quite a lot to try and cognitively do this. Takes a little bit of practice, and it's not for everyone. That's why we try and teach a few different techniques as well, because today you might be like, yep, loved the breathing, hated the mental health first aid kit, hated the visualisation, loved the thought challenging. Pick and choose the ones that you like and the ones that you think will work best for you. But with something like that, it can take a little bit of practice too. So I'd recommend having another go at it. You can just do that yourself, or there's guided versions online that you could find too. Any quick questions that people have before we get you to finish your little post questionnaire in? If you do have any that you want to ask us, feel free to come and grab us at the end as well. That's totally fine. So in front of you, you should have a little post-workshop questionnaire feedback as well. So it's double-sided. Hopefully it's pretty quick to fill in as well. It's got just a couple of questions that you completed at the beginning, and then it asks about any other workshops you might be interested in. And if you want to kind of keep up to date with what we're doing as part of WellMind's work, you can chuck your name and your email address on there as well. Again, if you just want to place those up at the front of the table when you're done, we'll come and collect them at the end too. Just a quick note as well, in your handouts, there's a little flyer for a workshop that Jess and I have got coming up for business leaders that we're running for the Australian Psychological Society. The details are on that flyer for the Hobart event. There's also one in Launceston. If you're interested or you think someone else might be interested, please come along or pass it on to them. We can send you more copies or an electronic copy if you need that as well. We'll just say a quick thank you as well while you're finishing filling that up, so that the guys from WorkSafe can wrap this up for us. But we want to say a really big thank you to everyone for your great engagement today. We know it's a lot to cover in 90 minutes. We always are a little bit ambitious probably with how much content we put in, but we really love this stuff, and we hope you got something out of it. If you want any resources or anything on anything we've covered today, let us know. You should have our email there on the flyer you've got, so please contact us. We can send things out. If you want to know more about the work we do or think your workplace would like us to come and do some work with you, please again just get in contact. But a big thank you otherwise.